All right, the summer's over, we're deep into the fall, starting to get cold outside, and winter is soon going to be upon us. So it's now time to break out the whoops and get them sewn up for a little wintertime running. So before we get started, with any whoop, you want to be cautious plugging it in just to USB because, for example, on this whoop, this is the eSheen US65, it powers everything when I plug this in the USB, including the VTX and camera. Now for this upgrade, we're going to be using Betaflight 4.3, as I mentioned already, and with that, you're going to want the latest configurator. I will drop a link down in the video description where you can download the configurator version that I'm using for this video, and then you can know that it's something I've vetted and looked at. So as always, we're going to connect up first. You can see I have Betaflight 4.2.3 on here, and I'm going to go ahead to the CLI, and you've seen this probably 1,000 times, but we type in diff-all, hit enter, and then go ahead and save that out. And then we save that. You can see here I've done it already, but I usually would save it out as the quad name and then Betaflight 4.2.x. From here, we're going to go back into the update firmware part of the configurator here. So you just click on this after it does this little reboot, and then come down to here. What we're going to do is show expert unstable, show expert here, and we're going to change this to development. From this point, you can hit this auto detect, and that will detect what board target it is, whatever the current one is, and it'll set that for you. And then you're going to go down here and pick one of these nightly builds. If you want to be on the exact nightly build that I would recommend, that's what we're going to do that's specific to this video until the stable release, which is going to be, I wouldn't hold your breath for the stable release. It's going to be after the holidays, I would bet. So if you wanted to get up on this now, I think this would be the way to go. But that is going to be 2549. So if you're seeing this video in the future, just scroll down to 2549, and that will be this exact build that this video is on. Of course, from there, we're going to hit load firmware button right here, which is just behind me there. And then from here, we're going to hit flash firmware. After that is done, we're going to go ahead and hit connect. Always hit apply custom default, so that really writes the configuration to it. It just has what it flashes as a general target. It actually writes the configuration onto the board, and then hit connect again. We're going to hit, and you can see it right here, we're going to hit load from file right behind me there, and we're going to go ahead and grab that file right here and bring that up. Now, this is where some people will say, no, you can't bring that whole thing in. I do this all the time. So, and especially on a whoop. So on a 5-inch, big quad, maybe we'll be a little more cautious, do a bunch of testing and vetting with the props off. But on this little whoops, it's not going to fly away on you. It's in your house, and it's not going to eat your face off. It's just a little, 1S or 2S whoop. You'll be all right. So we're going to go ahead and bring the whole thing in, and we're going to get a couple error messages, and we'll look at that, and I'll show you what those are. So we're going to hit execute, and you can see the red lines in there. Those are the ones that didn't run properly. So the variable names changed or something like that. So you go up in here and you can see set dyn, dterm, min, max. These are all low pass filter things. So these variable names have just changed. No big deal. This is all OSD stuff. You're in good shape. Again, this is low pass filter stuff. Don't worry about it. Again, this is just some settings. So here's the good part. If it doesn't accept, you just have the default. So you're going to be okay. So any of these error messages, it's just not bringing your configuration forward. It's just going to keep it at whatever is default, and default is safe. So with that, don't forget to go at the bottom after it does this and type in save and hit enter. And we're just going to take a gander down through it and make sure, I have a ports tab, I have VTX. Yeah, it looks about right. This configuration. This will be everything it was before. So you can see I had the 180 max. So any of the customized settings that you've set up or came with the default for your whoop before should be back in there again. All this stuff will bring forward all the fail-safe stuff, battery stuff. The PID tune stuff did not come forward, which is completely fine. We're going to check out the defaults here and see what those are like. Your rates should have come forward. You can see my actual rates have come forward. One thing you do need to be cautious about here is if you're using Betaflight rates and not actual rates are the default now. So you do want to check your rates. If you were using Betaflight rates, I'd recommend checking out actual rates and These are settings I use here for acro, and we'll talk about that for whoops here just in a second, because these don't, if you're using angle mode or horizon mode, none of these rates matter except for yaw, which is weird. So we'll talk about that in a second. But if you're using acro mode, obviously just type in some rates. You can use these as just an example of something to start off with if you're using actual rates for the first time, or you can kind of look at what your Betaflight rates had here and type some stuff in here to get similar curves. Of course, with that, what I'm going to do is then turn on my radio, and like I said, it powers everything, so even the receiver. I'm going to make sure everything's working there. You can see all my modes came across, so we're in good shape there. I do have some in-flight adjustments, which we'll touch on here in a moment, and then the motors protocol stuff. Now, I was using the RPM filter on this one previously. I'm actually going to turn that off since we are using an F411, and I'm going to rely more heavily on the dynamic notch. So toggling that off, we'll have that set up and are good to go. We, of course, OSD, video transmitter, all that stuff should have came along, so you can make any tweaks or adjustments you want to that. Actually, I need to get these moved up. I don't know why they're so low on here. That might be an adjustment just between the two releases, or it just might have been how low they were before. So I'm going to drag these up. Some people fly indoor and rate mode or acro mode all the time, just like you fly outside. So then, of course, everything's the same for your rates. The outside rates, you tweak those to be inside or whatever you want to do, but the rate system works the same. I fly with angle mode or horizon mode inside. A lot of people do as well. Top racers do, so don't feel ashamed by it. Sometimes people try to shame you, but there's a lot of good reason too, because when you bump into stuff, which happens a lot more frequent since you do have guards and you're kind of pushing it and it's inside and tight spaces, it can recover a lot faster than you can move your fingers. So I think it's better. But nevertheless, when you're doing that, Betaflight works very weird when it comes to the rates when you're in angle or horizon mode. So let's talk about that here for a second. When you are using angle or horizon mode, these rates for pitch and roll just don't matter at all. So it doesn't matter what numbers you have here, period. The only numbers that matter are what you have for the yaw access. That actually does matter. It follows it for that. So what is it using for pitch and roll access? Well, if it's actually over here on the PID settings, and if you scroll down to here, it's using this strength, this angle strength or horizon strength. And think of this as a rubber band. The higher that number, the stronger the rubber band is. So when you move your finger, that rubber band kind of pulls the quad to match your fingers. If it's a really high number, it's a really strong rubber band. As soon as you move your finger, it's pulling it right away to match it. If it's a low number, it's a loose rubber band. So when you move your fingers, it kind of sluggishly moves over to it. So set that to your liking. 50's the default. It's a little light in my opinion, so you might want to bump that up to like 65, 70. I am going to run it up to 65 here. That is what I typically like, but it's completely a feel thing, and I'm just using angle mode. This transitions is how many degrees in horizon mode, so you'd be at a 75-degree angle bank before it would actually flip into rate mode, so you can actually do the full rotation. So if you want that to be a really steep angle before that occurs. And I'm going to bump that up to 90 because I'm actually going to play with that a little and start running in horizon mode just so I can do some, as I'm going around stuff, just do a couple flips and rolls real quick, and it should snap me back in. I don't know how that's going to go. We'll see how it goes. But this angle limit is where you would, if you're in angle mode, it will only allow you to go up to this limit. So it's only going to let you go up to 55-degree bank angle, and then it will stop you. Now, again, if you want faster yaw moves, what you're going to want to do is bump this number up. So this max rate, if you're using actual rates, you'd want to bump this up. So if you want your yaw stick to be more sensitive, or have when it's over at the far side, have more throw or faster yaw moves, you're going to bump this number up in rates. But if it's roll or pitch, it's those other things. The other thing you may want to check out is Betaflight now has Expo on top of the angle strength and horizon strength settings. So you can access those in the CLI. So if we jump down to the CLI and type in Get Expo, you can see down here, now we have roll level Expo, pitch level Expo. and you can go from 0 to 100 there as well, and that will kind of smoothen out and soften that rubber band effect in the middle, but then have it more elastic at the end. And you can adjust this and the OSD, which may be a simpler spot to play around with it, because you can just kind of land just in the OSD and see how you like it and fiddle with it that way. Now, here's some things I would recommend checking out. If you're going to run your whoop maybe inside or outside, which sometimes I do, what I have is on a switch. So on a switch, it would be in angle mode, and then if this switch is up, it's in rate mode. So for that, you can see that's aux2 on there. So it's only when aux2 was in the middle here, and I'm just actually going to switch this to horizon mode. So let me activate horizon mode here. So then in aux2 being in the middle is horizon mode, but when it's out of that, so it's either all the way down or all the way up, it's not in horizon mode anymore. And for that, I want to have a slightly different rate profile. So if I go back to PIDs, I actually want this yaw to be slightly different between the two. So how do you do that? How do you have it so it's one thing one time and one thing another time? So we can go over to here to in-flight adjustments, and you can get this set up very similar to this, where you're again using aux2, and then you set these 3 different ranges as you see on the screen, and toggle these, and then you can set this to rate profile aux2, aux2, aux2 as well over here. So that means when this position switch is all the way up, that it's going to use rate profile 1. When this position switch is in the middle, it's going to use rate profile 2, and at the end it's going to use rate profile 3. And after you get this set up, you can actually see it in action if you go back into your PIDs tab and into your rates profiles tab, and then you start to switch it with your radio on. You can see that my rate profile here changes as I change these between. So you can get it set up, and you can also then of course switch between them and check that out. The other thing you're going to want to have on here is that when you are in acro mode, that you have air mode enabled, but when you are in angle mode or stabilized or horizon mode, stabilized mode is my radio will say, that you turn air mode off. That will solve the problem of wall suck, as they say, where you hit something, a couch, and the thing sucks up against it. That's all just air mode, which you do not want air mode on when you're flying around in the house. You don't need it, and it causes wall suck, so it sucks. So turn air mode off when you're using stabilized mode, or you're going to be flying in the house, and then turn it back on because you are going to need it for flips and rolls. Now, if you're noticing you don't even see air mode as an option there, you've got to make sure it's unchecked here on the configuration tab first. With this unchecked, then it will show up in the modes tab. If this is checked, it won't be there because then it's just on all the time. It's not an option to enable or disable it using it through or as a mode. Now, Betaflight 4.3 on its stable release when that comes out will have presets in there, and I would imagine there's going to be some whoop presets. But until that time, I've had up on the website for probably over a year at this point, presets that you can load per quad class. So if you go to theuavtech.com and then go down to presets down here, you can see I have them from whoops and toothpicks and all kinds of stuff. So if you come in here to whoops, and then you can just click on these images, do check this out up here for some recommended ESC settings, which we'll take a look at that in a second. But yeah, there's up here is a little bit just intro, what you generally see for this type of quad class. And then down here you can click on these images, and then it can show you the settings. Now, this is for Betaflight 4.2, but these PIDs up here are the same, so you can just move around the 4.3 stuff until I get around to updating these images to match the same numbers up top. So it's basically for this type of quad class, you're looking at the PDD ratio, or this number versus this number, to be about 1-to-1. So if this is 63, this would be 63. Now you can see this is 67. It's a little bit higher, but usually you need a little bit more dampening force. And also the PIDs are higher numbers than you're used to seeing on a 5-inch, just because they're generally so underpowered. Now, if you have a really, really powerful whoop, then maybe that's not the case, but I doubt it. So you're going to normally see PIDs like 60s, 80s, 60s to 80s, somewhere in that range. Anything less than that is really just way too low for a whoop type class quad. A whoop is very similar to like a 7, 8, or 9-inch quad in their PID settings, which are also, like 60s to 80s and even higher in some cases. For filter recommendations on this, it was having the RPM filter for Betaflight 4.2, but now that we have the new fancy dynamic notch, I'm just going to rely on that a little bit heavier, and it's one less thing to worry about with the bidirectional kind of jazz. So mileage may vary. If you want to use RPM, go for it. If you're just going to go with the dynamic notch, then that's pretty simple. If you are interested in doing a little tuning sesh on this, I'm going to have a Patreon only video coming out this week where we take a look at this indoors with the new OSD sliders in Betaflight 4.3 and how easy it is. You can make some adjustments back and forth just to see how it flies, and just kind of adjust some and tweak some things in to increase your whoop performance and feel. Again, down in the video description will be the link for that. So back under the filters tab, we're going to go ahead and leave these two here for now on that. We're going to set this to 300. We're going to go ahead and crank this up to 5. We're going to set this down to 100, and then we're going to take this up to 800. So micro motors, their RPMs are higher, so then their vibrations are higher in hertz value since it's 800 vibrations per second. That's what that equates to. Coming back over to the PIDs tab, if you do just see the 3 sliders here, that is in beginner mode. So we're going to go ahead and expand that out to expert mode. You are now an expert. And from there, we can make some adjustments. So what we're going to do here is we are going to raise up the dampening. So I'm going to take a look at this D min number, because that's actually our active D gains, and I want to raise that up to at least where that gets to be a 45. So I'm going to do 45, 50, that's close enough. So you can see the two there between the proportional and the D min, 45, 45, this is 47, 51, again, close enough. And then from there, I'm going to go ahead and grab this master slider at the bottom, and I will probably raise this up to 65. It seems like a good number. I would let iTerm and feed forward just come along for the ride. Wouldn't worry too much about those two. They should be in good shape. And then the other thing we're going to do down here, I guess we'll move this down to 10. So we'll put that as 10. And then also here, we'll bring this up to about a 10. So that will give us some more control if we're doing throttle pumps and whatnot. And that should be about the right numbers for that. I have a FlySky receiver, so I'm going to go ahead and do 2-point averaging on this. If it's anything FrSky, if it's not like Express LRS or Ghost, I would definitely do 2-point averaging. If it's Express LRS or Ghost, then you can just leave that to none. Outside of those two, you need to do 2-point averaging, and I mean it for Crossfire and Tracer too. The other thing I want to do, since we were talking noise, it's a little heads up thing that you can see at the end of flights, is you can toggle on this FFT max. And what that does is at the end of the flight, it will show you a statistical thing that will show you what the max motor vibration was. So you can see if we're getting up, if it is higher than that 800 we set on the dynamic notch, then you want to go up a little bit higher. And the number I'm talking about here is this one down here. Oh, I must not have saved it. To those settings right there, and then hit save. I gotta hit save, make sure I hit save this time. And the final thing we could check out is just the ESC settings. So what I'd recommend doing is with Chrome, go to esc-configurator.com. From here, you may need to click a button up at the top for it to access the USB connection you have. So go ahead and do that, and then pick the USB that your flight controller is plugged into. After that's done, I can go ahead and hit connect. You're going to have to plug in some batteries to your quad. I already have that done. And then hit read setup here. And then that will go ahead and read your ESCs one at a time, and you can see it's doing it right here. And then I have the SH50 ESCs that happen to be on this. I have BL Heli, I guess S on here, but I thought I had BL Heli M. So I'm pretty sure, so I'm just going to flash them all again. So I'll go ahead and hit flash all. From here you have options for BL Heli S, which is kind of the tried and the true BL Heli S, but that does not give the 48K version option on there. So I'm going to go ahead and hit Blue Jay. I'm going to leave the ESC the same. I'm going to go ahead and pick the latest, which I would guess is this 0.14. So I'll go ahead and pick that. And then I'm going to go ahead and hit 48K, 96K. It's pushing it. It's pretty, it's going to make them a little weak. You could try it if you want 96K, but I would definitely do 48 or 96. 48 is definitely what I would recommend though. going to go ahead and hit flash, and it will go through and then flash all the ESCs for me one at a time here, and you can see it's doing that right now. Once that is all done, now I'm positive I have the 48K on here. You can see some other settings over here. So motor timing is in good shape here in the 22.5. Might even try 30. So this would be with some experimental stuff. You may see some more power at 30. If you wanted to give that a go. I would fly it definitely on defaults first, see how everything's go. But if you wanted to experiment a little bit more, since these are micro motors, motor timing being a little higher, it would make some sense. Same thing for the RPM protection here. To move that up just a little bit more may make some sense, you know, go to 10 or 11. You got to just definitely keep track of your motors for temperatures. But if you're looking to make prop wash performance a little better, those are two things here that should help out a little bit. Again, that motor timing, increasing that some, and then bringing up this RPM ramp. Now, if you do make any changes, make sure you hit right setup, which is right there, before you exit, and that will push the changes to your ESCs, and you should be good to go. You just hit disconnect. Okay, well, that was it. Hopefully that helped a little bit to get your whoops up onto the latest and greatest Betaflight version. Maybe something you could play with this winter when you're a little bored inside. If it's anything like this outside, it's just cold, you don't want to go out there. Whoops are a great way to test new software as well, new firmware like Betaflight 4.3, since I think it will be a little bit yet until it comes out, just with the holidays coming up and everybody gets busy. But outside of that, thanks everybody for your time, and I hope this helps.